Hi guys, hi everybody, it's Leslie Tao here and I'm joined by the amazing and wonderful Clare Bell. Welcome to my YouTube, okay? If you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit that button now.
Hit it, guys, hit
it, smash it up, smash your phone up. Just kidding. So, guys, Clare, I have very special guests, whether you guys like them or not sometimes, right? But I think I've got very special guests that come on because everybody brings a bit of a different flavor, and Clare has an amazing story, and I had to get her on, and I actually had to book her in like maybe a month ago because she was so busy. But she is a serial entrepreneur. She's had about 22 years and more and going and counting in a business. And so she's been through the highs and the lows, and it was only in 2017 that she was actually homeless. But we're now, 3 years on, Clare, and then you've built up a property portfolio again. So I guess if you are skilled up in terms of skills and knowledge, and you have a strong mentality to match that, I think you can't ever be homeless, let's say, for too long, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but this interview is more about Clare because I think that every human has gone through hopefully their own journey, or you've got a journey that you are about to embark on. And I think Clare's incredible story of not giving up. We've all experienced highs and lows, good things and bad things. But so I just want to talk about Clare's story really, and hope that if you're going through a bad time, listen to what she's been through. Don't give up. Pick yourself up. And there's always a little golden nugget at the end of the rainbow. Okay, so let's spread some more support, some more love, some more kindness in the world. Okay, Clare, I'm gonna switch it over to you. Okay, and I guess introduce yourself to everybody, and I'll ask you some prompting questions along the way, but really it's about everybody getting to know you better as a person and influencer, really.
Okay, well, thanks very much firstly for inviting me onto the show, Leslie. It's a great pleasure to have a chat with you, and so I feel very humbled to be here today, so thank you. I suppose my journey has been an interesting one. As you've just alluded to, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think to start with, and you've just highlighted some of the journey of my own life, is that you have a choice. Everything is about a choice, and anything that you do in life, you can either be a victim or a victor. And before I step into anything, I always go forward with the victor mentality, and I think that's about taking responsibility that everything happens to you for a very valid reason. And I say everything that happens is either a lesson or a blessing, and so a lot of that is there to teach you something along the way. And before anything happens, I always take all of those parts and think, okay, well, what's the lesson out of this right now that's happening? And that's the way I look at everything. So I never reflect on anything as a bad experience. It's all a life experience. But yeah, 27.
That's beautiful. Sorry. I think that if I ever land myself in anything and I can't get out of it in terms of my mindset, I'm going to give you a call. Okay.
Do that.
That will happen. As long as we're living, we're going to have trials to go through, right?
Do you know what? It's a part of life. I believe that the obstacle is the way, and I look at everything that's thrown in front of me as a big boulder. And we can either. By any chance? Either what? Sorry.
Are you a Buddha?
I'm not far off. I'm getting there. I'm absolutely getting there. Yeah, slowly.
Philosophy on life is like going quite Buddha-ish. So I'm like, hey.
Yeah. So, and that's how I look at life. There's the obstacle is your way, and it's there to help you to strengthen yourself, strengthen your mind, and also build your resilience. And life isn't easy. It's, we are faced with constant challenges, and this, Leslie, as an entrepreneur yourself, you either hit the challenge and lie down and roll over and let it tickle your belly and give in, or you look at ways in which you can navigate that challenge, and that's what makes those that are successful, because they don't quit. And this could sound like the diatribe that many people hear and know and are used to, from an entrepreneurial background, but it's actually true. It is true.
True. Yeah, you don't stop until you succeed. Okay, otherwise, with every business, you're going to have a problem at some point, right? And there's no point burying your head in the sand. And when you know you're losing, don't be afraid to also cut your losses and move on to the next thing. There's no shame in that at all.
Exactly, and that comes down to ego. Okay, so you know that life is happening for us, it's not happening to us. It's not a personal attack when something doesn't go right, or when something isn't as successful as you had initially hoped it was going to be. That is just life, okay, and it's how you prepare your mindset to approach that. I have a very healthy approach to fear. I don't really 3 years ago, when all this was happening, there was one thing that was holding me back in life, and that was a fear of heights. So I took myself on a solo trip to Norway, and I climbed a mountain on my own. And I stood on the edge of this mountain, at the edge of Pulpit Rock, and I stood there and I looked over the front of it, and okay, I still don't like heights, but I'm not scared of them. And really, that was my last fear. And many things that we do is all about fear of what people will think of us, fear about how we're going to feel on the failure. And actually, if you can approach that and remove your ego from it, and have a healthy appreciation of the fear, actually, it's not that scary. It's just the illusion that you create before you attempt it.
Yeah. So Claire, let's go back a bit. So before you became the incredible you that you are now, okay, when did you realize that, you know, you really enjoy being an entrepreneur, you really enjoy business? You know, how did all that come about?
So I was born into I suppose I'm an inner city council house kid. I was born into a working class family up in Stoke-on-Trent. My father left his job when I was very young, and he started a industrial cleaning business. And I was the kind of kid that wanted a till for Christmas, and I was the kind of kid that used to I wanted an invoice book rather than a storybook. And so I was fascinated. You know, when you used to go to the post office and they used to put those little rubber things over and count the cash. And I just thought that was closely linked to what my dad was doing, and that I'd always go trotting out with him on a Friday evening when he'd be going collecting cash from his clients. And I found it absolutely fascinating. So I think that was my initial entry into the foray of business. And then when I was, I think I was 7 at the time, my sister went to a Christmas party, and they were letting off party poppers. And at the end of the event, they got this pile, the mound of the contents of the party poppers. And so I stuck it all in a carrier bag and I took it home with me. And so we're up close to the Christmas period, and what I did was do all these individual bags of this stuff that was out of the party poppers, and I went knocking on doors and carol singing. And whilst I'd got an audience, of course, I was selling them the bags of the contents of the party poppers as Christmas tree decoration. So I'd sell them for 10 pence each. So that's reflecting my age a little bit now. And I kind of worked out very quickly that you could make some decent money off of nothing, and that's really where the initial journey started into entrepreneurship.
I'm so young. I was like, I wasn't entrepreneurial at all when I was a kid. I started really quite late, but that's so young, like 7. Yeah. You're 7 years old.
And then I got my first job at the age of 11. I wanted a paper round, and I lied to the man that owned the shop and told him I was 13, which was the minimum age at that stage. And the paper sack was so heavy on a Sunday mornings that my dad used to drive along in his car with the boot open, with the paper sack in there.
Your dad was supportive.
Very, very supportive. Yeah. He's been probably my biggest supporter, and also the biggest culprit for beating me into shape to who I am today. And so then of course that gives you the independence of having some cash in your pocket, and you're off and running then. And then I just had this desire to do more. Started my first business at the age of 26, which was a West End Central London Recruitment Consultancy, and it was very successful very quickly. And it all really...
What sort of recruitment did you do?
So it was office support recruitment.
Okay, so any business then, right?
Yeah, any business that needed office support, again, based in the West End of London.
That's I'm sure it would have done really well, but London's a tough place to be, because I'm sure you had lots of competition as well, right?
So it was at the time when, and that saying of never take swimming lessons from somebody that's drowning. I didn't know that saying at the time, and I suppose when you're in your 20s, I'd just returned from working overseas. I'd worked overseas for several years in tourism. I had this I suppose confidence about me that was, some would say it was bullish, and probably quite too confident. I wouldn't say that I was obnoxious with it, but certainly that, you know, there's a level of confidence that can serve you, and a level of confidence that's not useful to you. And I was of the attitude that, you know, well, if 10,000 people in a square mile are doing recruitment, why can't I do it? And so I basically just went with the approach of doing it bigger, better, faster, more. And my first client was Total Fina Elf, based in Cavendish Square in West One.
Nice.
And I had the requirement for 2 temps just before Christmas. I started my business in November 1999.
How did you get this business in the first place? How did you get them as a client?
So I was working for an independent consultancy, and they were a client of theirs. And whether this is ethical or not, when I left, sorry,
you took them.
Well, I'd like to think that they followed me because of the service that I was offering, it was all done above board, and basically that's how they came on board. And then after that, I was working with a number of management consultants in Covent Garden, and it really just took off almost overnight. By year one, I was living in a studio in South London, and my most profitable week was a week before Christmas the following year, and I billed £13,000 in a week, which was pretty good for my first year of business. Yeah. Yeah. So that was my first foray into my grown-up business, let's say.
Oh, and so tell us a bit more. So you started up your own recruitment company. Then what happened to it? Because I'm assuming it did. You know, it went from strength to strength.
Yeah. So what I did with that was I built it up. One of my biggest clients at the time was lastminute.com. Lastminute.com used to have in the train stations around central London, at the airports nationally, they used to have tourist booths, and so I used to provide all the recruitment, because those years that I worked overseas, I was working in tourism, so I had a familiarity with the industry, and I was able to bring forward my recruitment skill and my knowledge of tourism. And so I gave them a very specific service and a almost bespoke delivery on what they were looking for. I packaged the business up. I sold 80% of it off to a competitor in my marketplace. And then what I did, thank you. What I did then was I decided that I'd had enough of living in London. So I took myself off to live at the seaside, and I bought a restaurant.
Whoa.
And it was a dream to want to. I always had this dream. Cooking for me is a big passion. It's almost like meditation. And I had this dream that I wanted to work in a kitchen and chop up, and as a form of meditation whilst watching the sea. I did that. I just didn't realise that it was going to be my own restaurant, and it's quite possibly still the hardest work I've ever done, because I chose to work in the business rather than on the business. I kept that for a few years and I sold it. And in between time, I also was involved in other businesses as well. I was a director and shareholder of a corporate travel consultancy. And we were basically finding travel solutions for the likes of the NHS and the Arts Council nationally. And then after that, I became involved in, you may remember at the time when the Home Information Pack was out and the Energy Performance Certificate.
Yeah.
When that was introduced into the market, which was 2006, 2007. So I was working as a consultant in there for Lending Solutions, which is the Your Move group. And I set up a training organisation for them, which was training home inspectors and energy assessors. And that was extremely successful, almost overnight. We turned over 750,000 in the first year. We literally, the supply and demand was out the window. And
wow.
And that's really where I started to, I invested in my first investment properties in 2003, bought my own house in London in 2002, did very well from that, and really started to leverage those the profits I was making off those businesses. And then I came back into that market, well, not into the market, but I was involved in the energy assessors and energy information pack, training, and that's really where I started to reignite my interest in property again. And then after that,
such a long timeline. It's like, so you've done so much, so much.
Yeah, so then we ran a support consultancy for energy assessors, because what I very quickly worked out with these guys was this was a new marketplace. We had a new requirement from communities and government to provide energy assessments on the homes nationally, and these guys were jumping ship at the golden nugget. That really forced a very different marketplace, because they were initially talking about energy performance certificates costing somewhere in the region of £200 when the market first started, and then suddenly we had thousands and thousands of assessors across all the postcodes nationally, and that drove the price down to like £40-odd per assessment.
Wow, that's a big drop there.
Absolutely. So all these people that got trained up on the promise of, earning great cash of going in and doing assessments didn't really materialize. So I run an organization. I started an organization that offered support services to assessors. So what we would do is we'd do all their back office admin. We would upload the reports into the software for them. And that was extremely successful. And I packaged that and sold that.
Who to? Like a competitor or a supplier?
I can't tell you that.
Oh, okay. It's confidential.
No. It was an energy assessor that was a private wealth individual that was working in renewable energy, who had trained several assessors. They'd funded their assessors. Well, I say several, it was quite a lot of people nationally, and they bought the business and ran it in-house. They're still running it today. It's a company based down in Mid-Kent.
So actually, I've got a question for you, Claire. I haven't asked this question to anybody before, because now I'm finding out also a bit more about you, because you have built up, packaged and sold, well, I don't know, at the moment it's been 2 businesses so far, is that right? From what you told me, there might be some
three actually. So there was a restaurant. I sold the restaurant.
Oh, and restaurant. So generally, how do you base your selling price? Do you base it on the turnover? How does that all work?
It depends on the industry. So the restaurant was literally, again, because it depends how much goodwill, what assets people are buying. The restaurant was very simple. It was 3 times the turnover from the period that we'd been trading. So that was nice and easy. Yeah. The recruitment company was goodwill mainly. There wasn't really any assets there. So that
base and existing contracts with the clients, right?
Yeah. And I think the easiest thing to say is that I always get somebody in to value it. So it will be an organisation that has experience in packaging and selling organisations, and then generally I'll source my own purchaser, and it's usually somebody within the industry. But we're only talking organisations up to, we're only turning over less than £1 million in both organisations. So these are not great big organisations, but
yeah, still healthy, very healthy figures though, right? For
yeah,
very healthy.
Yeah. So and then the recruitment consultancy was we did I'd say a individual negotiation on that, because it was the value of the clients that I was working with that this particular competitor was after. They were after a chunk of West End marketplace that I was working in, and they were a city-based consultancy. So that was negotiated purely on the strength of the contracts that I was working on and what I was doing, how that was rolling out nationally. The most recent one, which was the energy assessors one, again was very bespoke. It was bringing in an additional service to an existing organisation within the marketplace. So I'm lucky it's not been anything in my businesses that have gone out to the general market for sale, and it's been individual negotiations, and it's generally been somewhere around to give a crude kind of answer to you, somewhere around 3 times the trading amount from turnover.
That's really good. I think it's quite lucrative because obviously these businesses that you were running, fairly lowish overheads. The restaurant probably had some more overheads depending on, was it at least you had? But the other two businesses, recruitment and also the support service, I would imagine that your overheads could be controlled quite easily. So and I've got a question, Claire. So when you sold these businesses, so this is a bit random because I don't know the answer to this, but you would, which is, did you have to pay taxes on profits you earned from selling your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's the same capital gains tax we had to pay. Of course, you get, depending on what your constitution of your organisation is now, you'd have entrepreneur's relief if that's what you qualify for. But yes, I
you every day.
Yeah,
I think stuff like vicariously of you at the moment. I was like, that sounds interesting. We might want to sell some of our businesses at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been the kind of individual from an entrepreneur perspective is that everything is open for trade, including the business, and that I always look at it that you may have a service that somebody wants to integrate into their existing offering to their clients that you could help support, and that obviously, there's when we're talking about selling your business to a competitor, there's certain lines you don't want to cross. That they all form part of the negotiation of the offering. But I always believe that if you can enhance somebody else's business whilst continuing on your own journey, then yeah, there's always a conversation to be had.
Wow. So being, I would say really very successful so far through your business journey. Could you if you don't mind, tell us a bit about how then you ended up, becoming homeless not too long ago, back in 2017? What happened?
Okay, so there's a bit of a gap between 2000. Okay, so 2009 to 2013, I was involved in the security sector, and so I
can take you anywhere in terms of business. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? Let's do this. So much fun.
Business is business, Leslie. What it's, and you know this. You've had a transfer from different sectors. Business is business. It's about understanding the sector. Once you understand business, all it is then understanding each individual sector, and that is where the learning has to take place. It's about embedding yourself in that sector and expanding your knowledge and education as much and as far as you can to understand how that sector works and ticks. and then the subsectors within the sectors, things like the due diligence, of course, that goes without saying, but the specifics within the sector, and that's really, as an entrepreneur, I love working in different sectors because it's exciting. You're learning different things about different marketplaces, but ultimately the bottom line is it's people, and it's understanding psychology of people and how they tick, and that's really the bottom layer of everything that an entrepreneur, well, certainly from my own journey, needs to understand, and that's people. So I spent several years working in the security sector. That was a very, very interesting journey. And I know that we alluded to a question just before we started recording. The reason that I looked at this sector was it was very underrepresented by females. And I wanted to know why. Why was the security sector mainly male and brawn, and was there a place in the market for females in this particular sector? And actually, what I decided to do in 2009, I went on quite an intensive training program and trained in close protection, and that was a real eye-opener, real eye-opener. I've been very privileged. I've worked with some very interesting private wealth individuals. I've protected the Saudi royal family, the females in the family.
So just to double check, let's just go back to beginner's language, Claire. Okay, were you a bodyguard or something like that?
Well, you can call it
that. What was going on?
You can call it that, but it's
wow.
Affectionately, those people may become offended by that terminology. It doesn't really bother me, but the sector terminology for that particular role is close protection, and I spent several years in the security sector, but very quickly, because of my entrepreneurial background and my business background, by the time I've entered into this particular marketplace, I've now got plus 10 years experience of running organisations. So I very rapidly went in and was running this organisation on a 6-figure consultancy salary, working in the West End in Golden Square.
So Claire, where do we get up to?
So I was just about to say that. So very quickly, I went in from an operational.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went in from an operational kind of side of the business, and I was brought on board then as a consultant within the business, and I took the business up to £3 million just before I left.
Whoa. You're very proud, aren't you?
Thanks. And I around that time, so that was 2013. At the time, I was with my partner. We were same-sex marriage, and we were going through IVF with the hope of hopefully having a baby. My partner was carrying, so I'd become a little bit disenfranchised with the whole, I suppose, going after money, and I realised that actually deep in my soul, I'm not that motivated by money. I'm more motivated by people's success and helping people on their own personal journey. And so I decided that I wanted to get out of London. A few things influenced that decision. I was about to become a parent. I didn't want to be commuting. Hopefully becoming a parent. I didn't want to commute. I wanted to be at home more, and also that I sat in many meetings on the run-up to my final decision, listening to what I'll call stale, male and pale, which was, you can work that one out, men, who were literally just fighting for ego at a table. And I think I had a little bit of awakening, thinking, this just isn't me. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I kind of
really changed my focus, and I started to, at the time, I'd started running, and I became a running coach, and I wanted to help people to get fit, both physically and mentally.
Very different.
I'm all over. Well, there's a lot of people say, "Is there anything you haven't done?" And my answer to that is there's lots of things I haven't done, but I'm working on getting around to them.
You're really cool. Everybody needs a Clare Bell in their life to just inspire you. By the way, you're wasting your time. So have you ever considered this? I think that you're probably an amazing coach to have, because of the amount of experience you've had in different sectors and doing incredibly well out of all of them, and all the life experiences as well. You're really, really well-rounded. Everybody needs Clare Bell.
That's very kind of you, Leslie. Thank you. So I started to work with young people. So Dame Kelly Holmes, the former Olympian, triple gold medal, Dame Kelly Holmes. I was working with her charity as a consultant, and we were running programs nationally. I was responsible for running programs over in East Kent, and we positively influenced the lives of thousands of young people, working with teams of retired or ex-former Olympians and Commonwealth athletes. And it was all about building the resilience in young people and looking at if they've got disadvantaged backgrounds, whether that's financial disadvantage, emotional or physical disadvantage in any way, shape or form, and how we can transform their lives into living more positively. And so I was doing that for several years. Anyway, cut a long story short, the question you asked me was, how did I become homeless? As a result of working like a Trojan and making some very wrong life choices, i.e. I was going through a stage of putting everybody else in life first before me. I now have a mantra that and I do a training course on this, and it's called Mask On First. And it's about intrinsically entering yourself and finding out deep in your soul who you really are.
So spiritual.
It's completely spiritual.
By the way, I've been through that journey myself in some shape, way or form. I totally get what you're talking about, by the way.
Yeah.
You have to be really, I think one of the well, I might be wrong here, Claire, but I think one of the secrets, or maybe it's not a secret, to being successful, not just in business, but in life and happiness, is to know yourself and
absolutely
and know what
100%.
You like, right? And know what you like, what you don't like, and to always be 110% honest with yourself.
I love it, Leslie. Yes, absolutely. You're so right, and it has to start with you. Love has to start with you. Self-belief, self-love. And there is nothing wrong with it. We live in a society that's all about, if you do that, you're selfish. It's absolute rubbish. You cannot serve others unless you know how to serve yourself. You cannot love anybody else more than you love yourself. And if you're down on you, how can you support and love other people and service and help other people and a lot of people hate themselves? So you've got to go deep inside, you've got to work that out. And so all these experiences were, I was giving all of my time and all of my energy to everyone else and everything else. And I took my eye off the ball. I remember sitting in my home office one day, and my partner at the time was walking up the garden with my son. He'd been born at this stage, so we're now in 2016. And I looked down the garden, and one thing that I always regret doing was looking and thinking, what the hell do they want now? Because I was so busy, and I will never get that moment back. And I realised that was a great big mistake in my life. So much to the point, and this is a really pertinent point, is that my partner decided that I was no longer fit for purpose and traded me in for a younger model. And so the relationship subsequently broke down. Yes.
I'm gonna put this in here. Is your partner is a female partner at this point?
Correct. Yeah. So same sex marriage. Yeah.
You have a son. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I think you're my first or first friends on Friday who is in a same-sex relationship or marriage, and I wanted to highlight that and embrace that and tell you I support you, and I'm so proud that you're representing people that are a little bit more different, because we don't all have to have partners of different sex. And I just want to embrace that. I hope the words are coming out right, but I want to tell you, I embrace it. I hope my audience does as well, because we're in a world where it's so easy to get wrapped up and to, be negative is a big thing. Be negative, hateful towards other people. I think it's much better if we embrace and support each other more. So the more different you are, the more I embrace that. Yeah,
it's about thank you, Leslie. It's about being non-judgmental. We don't need to judge, okay? We don't need to judge. It doesn't, the philosophy I live by is that I don't care who you are. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care what colour you are. I don't care what you do. You are either a decent person or you're not, and that's the essence of life. And if you're not a decent person, I have three choices. I can accept it. I can change it, which I can't because it's your life, not mine, or I can move away from it, and I simply just move away from it. And that's it.
Just move away. I think, look, be in the public eye. I get it. I get it as well. Like, I do get people that don't like me, and that's fine, but that's their problem and not mine. I'm happy to be. Right?
And that's it. What they think of you is none of your business. It's none of your business, and there's nothing. That's their reality and their perception of you. Yeah. And it's not your job to make everybody in the world make you happy. And I think it was Steve Jobs that said, if you want people to make you happy, sell chocolate or sell ice cream. And that's it. Don't do what you're doing. Go and sell ice cream, because that makes people happy. And not everybody likes ice cream. That's why there's other things available.
But I think if it was I never would have got myself on social media, by the way, maybe even 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, I would say. It was the last thing I would have wanted to do is film and get myself out there. But then it happened, and I thought, okay, I think my role is kind of facilitating introductions to different people, have a different perspective on things, and to provide a platform for that. And I think that's actually quite important, because we're not all the same. We're all different.
No, we're not.
And everybody's all the different stories I've had, and your story so far that we're listening to has all been that's what I really enjoy. I like to hear about people's stories and their journeys to become who you are now, because obviously you're very successful. So your point was you were working too hard at one point. You sort of forgot about
what was important. What was important?
Family time. And then you just got in for a younger model. That's nuts.
Got traded in, yeah. And do you know what? I say that with a smile on my face. Everybody's happy now. That's important to say that. And that the ultimate goal is to have a happy, healthy child, and we definitely have that. And that I have a fabulous relationship with my ex-partner, and that's I'm not saying that for the camera. That is how it is. I made the mistakes. I take on board the responsibility of the failures of that relationship, and that's my doing. But I walked away and I learned from that. So to cut a long story short, basically, I ended up homeless, and that was a combined choice. It was one of us had to leave the family home. I wasn't in a financial position at the time, because I'd gone from a six-figure salary, or should I say a six-figure consultancy salary. I'd jumped ship to work with young disadvantaged people. My partner at the time, my ex now, was on maternity, and we were not in a period of receiving maternity pay any longer, because she'd taken additional time out of work. So we went from being on, and I'll give you the figures, we went on being somewhere in the region of 120k into the household a year to £13,000. So
yeah, that's a massive drop. Wow.
Yeah. But and I'm saying that really for a reason. I'm saying that for a reason, because if people want to do something in their life that's close to where their soul is calling them to be, then the money doesn't matter. I built that back up from 13 into another successful business. But at the cost of that was losing my relationship, because I'd got all the ingredients wrong. I was trying to make a cake with only flour, and that doesn't happen. You need all the right ingredients. And so I rented a property for a short amount of time, and then I voluntarily and through circumstance became homeless. I sofa surfed for several months, and what I did do.
Wait, you find out who your true friends are.
Hey, I tell you what, that's a good point you make. There were people that I thought would always be solid in my life, and there were people that I took the opinion that they were just flighty. You really don't know who has got your back until you need your back getting. And don't forget, so I'm not only just homeless, I'm emotionally crashed at this point. I'm completely burnt out.